Hey harpists and harp lovers, welcome back to my channel. I usually post videos of me playing the harp, but every once in a while I love to post videos of educational harp content, and today we'll be covering the basics of harp care. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, consider leaving a like or comment, or even consider subscribing. Before we get into the harp care, let's go over the anatomy of the harp so we know what we're working with. Although harps come in all shapes and sizes and types, the general structure of any harp is more or less the same. Let's go over the main components that harps share, and then we'll get into the specifics of lever harp versus pedal harp. The base, the column, the neck, and the sound box. More specifically, we have the crown, the shoulder, and the feet. Further, any harp has tuning pins, which are used to tune the harp, bridge pins where the strings rest. The soundboard of the harp is where the sound comes out that is created in the sound box. This strip of wood that runs along the middle of the soundboard is called the string rib, and the little holes where the string come through are called grommets. In the back of the harp, in the sound box, there are sound holes. This is where you can get to the inside of the harp and thread strings through. Now we can get into specifics of the parts of lever harps versus pedal harps. Really, the only thing that a lever harp has that a pedal harp doesn't is, of course, the levers, which are used to change the pitch of a string by 1/2 tone or 1/2 step. That is accomplished by raising the lever, which puts more tension on the string and raises the pitch. There are quite a bit more moving parts to a pedal harp. The most obvious being the pedals, which are used to change the pitch of the strings, kind of like how the levers are, but a little different. The pedals run through the base of the harp, as you can see here, and that mechanism continues up through the column of the harp. From there, in the neck of the harp, you can see where the mechanism continues. That mechanism is what control these discs or actions, which are used to change the pitch of the string between flat, natural, and sharp. Every string has 2 discs or actions. You engage the discs by using the foot pedals. When I push this pedal for a C string down, it engages the top disc, which raises it by 1/2 step. When I press the pedal down into the bottommost position, the bottom disc here engages and raises it 1 more 1/2 step. Here's how it sounds when one string is played and the pedals are engaged at the same time. Each note in the scale has a pedal assigned to it. The pedal's top position means that the string is in its loosest state, or its flat state. When you engage the pedal into the middle position, it tightens that string by 1/2 step and makes it a natural. If you push it again, it engages it and tightens it the most and puts it into its sharp position. This pedal on the end here is the pedal for all the D strings on the harp. So when I engage this pedal, it will change all of the D strings on the harp. Right now it's in the position that makes all of the D strings a D flat. Now it's a D natural, and now they're all D sharps. Depending on the harp, there can be literally an entire metric ton of pressure being exerted upon the instrument. So it's important to care for both the structure and the strings of your instrument in order to prolong its life as long as possible. And with that, let's segue into the basics of caring for your harp. The main cause of wear and damage to your harp is the environment in which it's kept in. And I've gone over these environmental factors a bit already in my harp tuning video, which I'll link here, but we're going to revisit them today in the scope of how it relates to your instrument as a whole, not just the strings. The first environmental factor to keep an eye on in your harp's environment is the temperature. Extreme heat can cause the special glue holding your harp together to soften and expand and can compromise the integrity of the structure. And extreme cold can cause the wood to contract, which can also lead to cracking. And then there's the humidity factor. The best humidity level for wooden instruments is anywhere between 40 and 50, maybe up to 60%. When the humidity in an environment is too low, it can cause moisture to leave the wood and cause cracking. If the humidity is too high, there's too much moisture in the air, it can cause moisture to enter the wood and make it swell. This is a lot less common, but it can lead to warping in the wood. This also goes for direct contact with water on the instrument, which you definitely want to avoid, especially in situations like rain, where you can't clean up the water immediately. If the water sits on the harp too long, it can cause warping. Other things that I would avoid when bringing your harp out of your home environment or wherever it's kept and bringing it out into the world, like for a gig or something, is direct sun, which can cause damage to the wood and cause strings to break, extreme heat or cold like we discussed, and inclement weather like rain or snow. Avoid playing gigs outside in extreme temperatures or inclement weather, and provide a clause in your contract that addresses these things when people hire you. For example, you can have a clause that requires an alternate location to be provided in the case of rain or snow or other inclement weather. You can also have a temperature clause that says if the temperature exceeds, say, 90 degrees outside, or is lower than 40 or 50 degrees, that is something else to take in consideration when you're being hired to play at an outside gig. Also, never leave your harp in a parked car for extended periods of time. The environment in a parked car is not very regulated because it's influenced by the outside temperatures and humidity and everything, and so it's very unpredictable when trying to keep your harp in a controlled environment. So try to avoid leaving your harp in a parked car. Also, in a parked car on a hot day, we've all heard about how hot it gets inside the car. That's why you shouldn't leave pets or kids in your car on a hot day or on a cold day unless the car is running and in a temperature-controlled environment. As for the placement of your harp in its home environment, whether that be your house or a studio or a classroom, you'll want to do your best to make sure that the environment where the harp lives is as controlled and temperate as possible. This could mean providing a heater or a fan, never pointed directly at the harp, but something that can control the temperature in the ambience of the room and not a direct source of pointed heat or cold. Also, a humidifier for the room can do wonders in increasing the humidity and regulating it in the room, especially in the winter when your heater is going and then the air is already dry because it's cold outside. That can cause a lot of wear and tear on your harp if it's not supplemented and helped along by a humidifier. I use a humidifier in my studio room, and I also have a hydrometer which monitors the humidity, and I can take measures to alter what the humidifier is putting out depending on what the hydrometer reads. Also, in your harp's home environment, it's really helpful to keep the harp covered when you're not using it with a dust cover. You can get dust covers from most harp makers, and it definitely helps you not have to clean the harp as much because it protects it from the natural dust that's occurring in the room. Putting on a dust cover when you're not using your harp can also be really helpful if you have little kids or pets running around that might knock stuff into your harp. The dust cover can protect it from dings or nicks. When deciding on the placement of your harp within its home location, whether that be your home or a studio or a classroom, etc., it's best to avoid areas that are high traffic, as well as areas that are near a fireplace or a window or air vents where the harp can be subjugated to more fluctuations in temperature and humidity and environmental factors. I'm now being interrupted by some very rowdy boys who decided they want to play right now. Another aspect of harp care, of course, is cleaning. Try to always wash your hands before playing your harp to avoid transferring dirt and oil onto both your strings and the instrument itself. I would also recommend dusting your harp every few days, just running it over with a soft cloth. I also enjoy these handheld dusters that have the little appendages that can get into hard to reach spots as well. You can also use brushes like paint brushes or makeup brushes to get into the nooks and crannies, especially around the levers and tuning pins and discs. Just make sure you find a good quality brush that isn't going to shed little hairs everywhere, because it's pretty annoying to have to go back and get all the little hairs out from the nooks and crannies that you've just dusted. To get in the nooks and crannies, you can also use an air puffer. I would maybe avoid using the compressed air cans because the air that comes out is really cold, and I don't think the strings would like it very much if you blew it on them. To sanitize your harp, you can wipe down the strings with a tiny bit of hand sanitizer on a cloth. During the COVID pandemic at the beginning of 2020, Salvi Harps came out with an article discussing sanitizing harps, and they were able to consult with the popular string maker Bow brand about ways to sanitize your harp strings. And Bow brand stated, "It seems that hand sanitizer has no harmful impact on our strings. The disinfectant gel we tested contains 68% alcohol. Even with copious amounts of gel, the strings did not react. In addition, with a gel-impregnated cloth, the strings dried very quickly due to the alcoholic strength." You can also use a small amount of dish soap and water, Windex, or mild cleaner for dirt and oil on the harp itself. Just make sure not to apply directly to the harp, but onto the cloth, and then dry with a separate cloth immediately after. Also, polishing your harp regularly will keep it looking nice and shiny and new. Just make sure not to use regular furniture polish. The harp maker Lyon & Healy sells their own harp polish that is safe for harps. There are also some other researched and recommended brands by Dusty Strings, which is their Tibet almond stick, and Music Makers, which they use the Old English polish. And I'll put links to these items that I'm discussing in the description box of this video. When it comes to fixing little nicks in the paint or in the wood of your harp, I found that these furniture markers that I found on Amazon work really well for both furniture and harps. You just use whichever color of marker matches your wood. You just put a little bit on there, rub it off. If you have a black harp like me, a regular black Sharpie also does the trick. Another important factor in your harp's health is regularly tuning it. You can see my previous video all about tuning your harp for more information. Also, if you have a pedal harp, it can be really beneficial to get your harp regulated. Regulation is mainly beneficial for pedal harps just because of how many moving parts there are in a pedal harp. And it's basically a maintenance procedure where all of the moving parts in your harp are checked and tightened and tuned up so it's performing at its very best. How often you get your pedal harp regulated kind of just depends on how often you move your harp, how often you use it. I personally get mine regulated every other year. You can learn to do the steps of regulation on your own, and I'll link a very useful book in learning how to do harp maintenance yourself. But you can also check online for a professional harp regulator near you who can service it for you. Sometimes even when your harp is in tip-top shape, there can still be random causes of buzzing and noise that might pop up through its life. There's a great troubleshooting document by Dusty Strings that I'll link in the description of this video that helps you walk through identifying causes of buzzing. It could be something that's fallen down inside of your harp, it could be a loose lever or disc, it could be a weirdly tied knot, it could be a worn down string, or it could even be sympathetic vibrations in the room where the harp is. Also, just one more random tip that I have discovered through my life as a harpist is if you're noticing a weird squeaking sound coming from your strings when you play, or like it's coming from your fingers on the strings, You might want to check or clean your strings for excess dirt and oil buildup. Also, if your hands are super dry, that can also be the cause of that weird squeaking friction feeling of your fingers on the strings. Also, I once had a student who had that problem and she couldn't figure out what was causing it. And she eventually realized that it was the lotion that she was using. She was using Bath & Body Works lotion, which I think if you've used it, you know that it's not super duper moisturizing, and it can kind of sometimes leave a weird film or like a buildup on your hands. And once she stopped using that Bath & Body Works lotion, the weird squeaking went away. And that brings us to the end of our video today, the basics of harp care and maintenance. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments and I'll answer to the best of my ability. Check the link in the description for all of the many things that I talked about in this video. Once again, if you liked this video, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, and you can click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. Thank you so much.